Hello viewers, welcome to Kids Auto and Truck Repair. Today we have a 2017 Freightliner Sprinter with a 3.0 liter engine. The customer complaint on this vehicle is the engine is shaking and the check engine light is remaining on the dash. He also said that when he drives down the road, the vehicle is losing power. Now, the owner of this vehicle is one of our subscribers. He found us on YouTube. He reached out to us. We sent him the shop address. He took his van to us so we can fix it for him. So, Fabe, thank you very much for bringing business to us. Now, I also have to mention that the owner of this van is very mechanically inclined. He knows a lot about fixing vehicles, so he fixes his van himself. He actually told me that when he noticed the check engine light coming on the dash, he has a little scan tool. He scanned the engine computer and he found misfire codes in the engine computer. So cylinder 1 and cylinder 4 was misfiring. He actually watched one of my videos and he told me that he followed the steps in the video. He replaced the injector. After replacing the injectors, actually he replaced 2 injectors. After replacing 2 injectors, the vehicle was still not fixed. So when he called me, he told me, Dio, I followed the steps in the video. I replaced the injectors, but my vehicle is still misfiring. I said, well, tell me what you did. So he explained what he did. He told me he just watched the videos and then he replaced the injectors. So he didn't check the injector wiring. He didn't do a compression test because on a diesel engine, when you have a misfiring cylinder, the issue is either a defective injector or a mechanical problem in that specific cylinder. So I asked him, did you check compression? Did you check the injector wiring? What test did you do before you replaced the injectors? He told me I didn't do any test, I just replaced the injectors. So that's good information to know. He also brought the vehicle with the injectors that he replaced and he bought another set of injectors online. I mean, I hate buying aftermarket injectors online, but he said he bought them from a source that said that those injectors are OEM. I told him if this vehicle ends up needing injectors, we can install those injectors, but I'm not going to warranty anything. I always install OEM injectors. I mean injectors that I get from Mercedes, but he provided his own injectors. If this vehicle is going to need injectors, we're going to install them and then we'll see what happens. So let's go in the vehicle. I'm going to show you the injectors that he replaced and then I'm going to show you the ones that he bought. He has a couple injectors in the van and then we're going to start the engine so we can confirm the customer's complaint and then our diagnosis will start from there. So now let's go in the vehicle. All right, so I'm going to start the engine so we can confirm the complaint. This engine is shaking very badly. So the check engine light is on right there, as you can see. Check engine light is remaining on the dash. So customer's complaint confirmed. Let's go under the hood so I can show you the engine. The engine is shaking very badly. So check this out. Matt, if you can show everyone, you see how badly the engine is shaking? Yeah, look at that. This engine is misfiring. Yeah, this is bad. Okay, we don't want to run this too long. So what the customer did was he replaced this injector. So this is injector number 1. So he replaced this injector and then he replaced injector number 4, which is the injector over here below this silencer. As you can see, the engine is shaking like crazy. We have confirmed the customer's complaint. So now let's go in the vehicle so we can scan the engine computer and see what we're gonna find. I'm gonna turn off the engine. I'm gonna turn the key on. I already got the dongle for the scan tool connected. So now let's scan this and see what codes we have. I'm sure we're gonna have misfire codes. Like just based on how the engine is shaking, you can tell that this engine is misfiring. All right, so the scan tool has identified the vehicle 2017 Mercedes Sprinter with a 3.0 liter engine. Everything looks good. So let's do a code scan. Let's scan all the control units on the vehicle. and see what we got. So we have 5 trouble codes in the engine computer. First code is P16C200. It says misfire detected on cylinder X. What's cylinder X? This is interesting. And then P16C400, misfire detected on cylinder X. And then P16C600, misfire detected on cylinder X. So from experience, after working on a lot of these sprinters, when you see a P16C2, for example, the first one says P16C200. Usually the 200, I mean the letter that comes after P16C, so whatever number or whatever letter you have after C, whether it's a number or a letter, that usually indicates your cylinder number. So for example, this one here, the second code says P16C400. So this is cylinder number 4, misfiring, okay? And then we have the last code is water content in fuel. Filter has reached the upper limit value, okay? So looks like the fuel filter also has to be replaced on this thing. Now, a bad fuel filter can also cause an engine to misfire. So we might have to check that to see if the fuel filter is good, okay? Because this can be as simple as a bad fuel filter. So we have a water and fuel issue here. Now, I think I asked him about this. He told me he drained the tank because, I mean, this guy knows a lot about, fixing cars. Like he watches YouTube videos and he fixes his van himself. I asked him, do you have good fuel in the tank? Because if you have bad fuel in the tank, that can cause the engine to misfire also. He told me that he drained the tank and put new fuel in it. So fuel is probably not our issue here, but that is something to keep in the back of our minds. We might have to get a fuel sample and test it. Not that I don't trust what he's telling me, but you never know. It's always good to check and double check. So let's scroll down and see what else we have. Now, on the generic side of the tool, we have P0301, cylinder 1 misfire detected. So we have a specific cylinder code on the generic side of the tool. And then we have P0300, random multiple cylinder misfire detected. So he told me he had 2 codes, cylinder 1 and cylinder 4. He replaced those 2 injectors on those 2 cylinders, and then the engine kept misfiring. Now we have a code for cylinder 1. So maybe cylinder 1 is what's misfiring and causing the engine computer to have multiple cylinder misfire codes in the engine computer. So now what I want to do is I want to go under the hood and do some tests. A misfire occurs when the combustion event in a specific cylinder does not occur properly. Now, on a diesel engine, 95% of the time, a misfire is caused by 2 things: a defective injector or a mechanical problem on a specific cylinder. Now, a defective glow plug does not usually cause a misfire, because the way a diesel engine turns on is when the piston in the cylinder travels towards top dead center. As it's pushing the air towards top dead center on the compression stroke, the piston traveling up will heat up the air inside the cylinder, and then when the injector sprays fuel in the cylinder, that is what causes the air and fuel mixture to ignite or to burn inside the cylinder. So it's not necessarily the glow plug. The glow plug just helps the air that comes into the cylinder gets warmed up, gets hot, and then the engine would run. So if you have a misfire, a defective glow plug will not cause a misfire. In case some of you might say maybe the issue is the glow plug, it's not the glow plug, because if you have a bad glow plug, it might cause a long crank, but once the engine starts, the engine will be smooth. So since we have a misfire, we either have a bad injector or a mechanical problem with the engine. We're gonna start by checking our engine mechanically. So I'm gonna do a relative compression test just to rule out any type of mechanical issues that we might have. After we're done with our relative compression test, if the engine passes the relative compression test, then we're gonna check the injection system. We're gonna check the injectors and everything. So before we go under the hood and tell you what test I'm gonna do first, I'm gonna show you the injectors that this guy installed he had them here. He actually showed me these injectors. He has a box. Let me show you. So this is what he ordered online. Now these are the injectors that he wants me to install if this vehicle ends up needing injectors. So he told me these are remanufactured injectors. He said they're good. So they're brand new injectors. I told him I don't trust these injectors. I will trust the ones I get from Mercedes better, but he said install these ones and hopefully this will fix it. If not, we're gonna have to get some from Mercedes. So he ordered 6 of them. As you can see, we have 6 injectors. And then he also has the other ones, the old ones that he removed. They're somewhere here. Now, I don't usually allow customers to bring their own parts, but this guy had already ordered this. I told him I'm not gonna install them, but he really, I mean, he asked me, he was like, please, I'm sorry, please, I beg you, install this. And I told him, if I install these injectors and they still don't work, if I take them out again to install the OEM ones, you're gonna pay labor twice. Are you okay with that? He was like, yes, okay, sign a waiver. So we're gonna install these ones. Hopefully that will help. I don't know where the other ones are. Let's go under the hood. First test we're gonna do is gonna be the relative compression test. We're gonna go under the vehicle. We're gonna get access to the starter. I'm gonna show you. Some of you are probably familiar with this test. I've done it a couple of times here on the channel. We're going to crank the starter while the engine is off. We're gonna watch the voltage drop across the battery. If our cylinders have good compression in them, when the engine is cranking, we're gonna have a consistent voltage drop across the battery. So we should see nice and clean peaks and valleys across the battery when the starter is spinning. Okay, so let's go under the vehicle. We're gonna get hooked up and then I'll show you what we're gonna do. Actually, we're gonna have to get access to the battery before. So the battery is here under this mat. So I'm gonna move this. So I'm just gonna lift this carpet. I'm not gonna remove it completely. I'm just gonna get it out of the way. Hopefully I can keep this to stay up here. Okay, just like that. I'm gonna remove this cover so we can get access to the battery. I'm gonna undo these bolts. I'm just gonna loosen them. I don't have to remove them completely. Just loose, like that. Then we're gonna slide this back. And then we're gonna lift this. Okay. So now we have access to the battery. We're gonna lift this cover. Okay. Just like that. Now, I'm gonna use my, let me put this down here. We're gonna use our lab scope. We're gonna get out of the scan tool. We're gonna go to our lab scope. We're gonna go to scope multimeter and then 4-channel lab scope. I'm gonna turn off all these channels. We're just gonna look at one channel, the yellow one. Let me grab my test leads. All right, so I grabbed my lab scope test lead here. I'm going to connect these test leads to the battery because we're going to do a voltage drop test at the battery. And then I'm going to connect this to the lab scope. Okay, so as you can see right now on the lab scope screen, we are reading system voltage. 12.16 volts. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to AC couple this. We're gonna increase our time base to 1 second. Now let's go under the vehicle so we can connect. I'm gonna use a jumper, not a jumper wire. I'm gonna use a switch, a jump start switch. Let me grab the switch. So I'm going to use this jump start switch. We're gonna connect this switch to battery positive. So one side of the switch is gonna go to battery positive, and then the other side of the switch is gonna go to the to the control wire on the starter. So when I press this switch, when I press it down, power will flow from the battery to the starter, which will energize the starter. It's gonna crank the engine. We're gonna do that with the key off. So I'm gonna remove the key. I'm gonna get the key out of the ignition. Once we send power to the starter, it's just going to crank the engine. The engine is not gonna start. So that is going to give us a nice and consistent voltage drop waveform across the battery if this engine is good. And that will give us a good indication of how this engine is running mechanically. So let's go under the vehicle so we can get this switch connected. We are here under the vehicle. This is our starter. I'm gonna connect my alligator clamp to the starter control wire. So we're gonna connect it to this tiny bolt over here, tiny nut, this 10mm nut, okay? So if we send power down this wire, our starter is going to turn, okay? So that's good. So now let's go back in the vehicle. This test lead is coming from the starter. Okay, now I'm gonna use this switch. I don't wanna have so many wires in the way. It's gonna be a little confusing. So I'm gonna connect one side of the switch to battery positive. And then the other side of the switch, so one wire on the switch is gonna go to battery positive, and then the other wire on the switch is going to go to the wire that's connected to the starter. Now, if I press this wire, not the wire, if I press this switch, this will allow power to go from the battery to the starter. So if I press this switch, now the engine should crank. So right there, I hope you can hear that. The engine is cranking. Now, based on how the engine sounds, I can tell that we do not have a compression issue. Now, I'm gonna readjust my settings on our lab scope. So let's go down to 2 volts. Okay. Now let's do this one more time. Okay. Let me invert this. Hold on. Actually, I kind of don't really like what I saw. Let me increase this over here. So let's do this one more time. Oh, this is a problem, guys. I'm gonna pause this. I don't know if you guys see a problem. I saw a problem. Check this out. How does this waveform look? I'm gonna have to sit down. We have a bigger problem here, Matt. We have it's a little weird because based on how it sounds, hold on, let's listen to it again. I hope the camera is gonna pick this up. Now I hear it. I couldn't really hear that at first. We have a mechanical problem with this engine. When it's cranking, there's a I don't know, it's gonna, Matt is laughing at me as I'm doing this. Matt, come on, just listen with me, Matt, listen. You hear that? Sometimes you gotta make these sounds when you're like diagnosing a vehicle, you know? Yeah, so we have a misfire. We have a cylinder that has a compression issue. Actually, let me get this out of the way. This is not looking good. Let me come up here. I'm gonna have to sit down so I can analyze this properly here. Oh man. Okay. This is not looking good because what I see, it looks like we have a dead cylinder here. We have a dead cylinder because, oh man. Yeah, we have a dead cylinder because over here, you see how we have this big hump over here? There's this big hump. There's a peak over here. And then if we count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's a dead hole right here. And then it repeats itself. Yeah, this is the problem. Fabe is not gonna wanna hear this. And guys, this is why you have to pay for diagnosis. Don't just be buying parts online. I know some parts are cheap online. Don't just be buying parts and throwing parts at your vehicle. Sometimes it's cheaper. I mean, not sometimes. I shouldn't say sometimes. most of the time it's cheaper to just go to a professional mechanic, pay for a diagnosis, have them diagnose the vehicle and figure out exactly where the issue is before you buy parts. Because all these parts he bought and all the labor, the time he spent to replace the parts and everything, he didn't need that because there's a dead cylinder right now, you know, and this is a mechanical issue. This is a 100%. Let me see if I can put these two, peaks on the screen. Yeah, there's a dead cylinder. There's one cylinder that's missing. So even if we replace injectors on this Sprinter, it's not going to be fixed. There's a mechanical problem with this engine. So let's analyze this one more time. There is one thing I would like to do. I don't know if this is going to help. What I'm thinking about is I can synchronize. No, I won't be able to do it because I want the engine to not start. Because if I turn the key on and crank it, the engine can start. Because what I'm thinking, you can do this you can do this very easily on a gas engine, but on a diesel engine it's very difficult because the pattern that we have right now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to synchronize this relative compression waveform with one injector. So I was gonna look at one injector firing event, and I was gonna synchronize it with our relative compression waveform to figure out what cylinder has a dead hole. Okay, that was gonna allow us to figure out what cylinder has low compression. Now we can remove the glow plugs. I actually have a special adapter that I made a couple months ago, I think almost a year now. An adapter I made from the machine shop. It's like a glow plug. You remove the glow plug, you screw it where the glow plug goes into, then you attach a compression gauge to it, you crank the engine. That can also tell you how much compression you have in a specific cylinder. Now, if you really want to figure out if it's a timing issue or stuff like that, you can use a pressure transducer. We might even have to do that to make this a lot cooler because I like that kind of stuff. But we might have to do part 2 on diagnosing this. So right now, one thing we already know is this has a mechanical problem. One cylinder is dead. Okay, one cylinder has low compression. This engine has to be replaced. I mean, it's either we have to take the engine apart and figure out what's causing this to have low compression, maybe a sticking valve. We might have to use a pressure transducer in a cylinder. We might have to do an in-cylinder pressure transducer test to figure out if it's a timing issue. But all of that will lead us to either replacing the engine or tearing the engine apart. Now, if I turn the key on, I don't know if you guys saw that, this Sprinter has 203,000 miles. I don't know if Matt can see the mileage on that on the cluster there. So 203,000 miles. Now, what we have over here on the screen tells us that we have 5 cylinders that have compression, but the other cylinders, one cylinder doesn't. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 peaks on the lab scope screen, but we have a dead hole over here. Let me undo this. Let me unfreeze this. Let's do the same test again. Okay, so if we go back, and this is very consistent, we have the same pattern coming back every single time. It sucks that I cannot really synchronize this to figure out what cylinder has a dead hole. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then dead hole, and then we have a peak here again. So watch this over here, okay? So this is, we have a peak over here. Okay, so this tells me that this cylinder has compression in it, because when the piston gets towards top dead center, as air is compressed in the cylinder on the compression stroke, it's gonna make the starter to work harder, the starter will have to work, hard to push the piston towards stop dead center, which will cause the starter to draw more current. So as the starter draws more current, the voltage will drop even further. Okay, so that's what causes these peaks and valleys. So over here we have a peak, and then it comes down, and then we have another peak over here, and then down, and then peak. So this is good. And then, oops. Yeah, so peak over here, and then comes down, and then another peak, and then another peak over here, and then there's a peak over here, and then a valley, and then a peak over here. But look at over here, dead. Okay, so we're missing a peak up here. Okay, so this is a dead cylinder. Okay, now that I'm listening closely, I can actually hear it. Yeah, so I mean, we are done. We are done with our diagnosis. I don't see what else we can do, because again, I would love to synchronize this, but the thing is, if I turn the key on right now, let me try to turn the key on and crank it with my switch. I believe it's gonna start. Oh, no, it didn't start. Okay, so the key is on. I'm gonna crank it. So it didn't start. Now let's try to start it with the key. Okay, so with the key it starts. So I'm going to turn the key on. The key is on right now. I'm going to crank it. So it's not starting, but I wonder if the injector is being turned on. If the injectors are being turned on, we can actually look at our waveform, our relative compression waveform on the lab scope screen, and then we can synchronize it with one injector to see if we can figure out which cylinder has a dead hole. So actually, just for gigs and giggles, let's try that. Let's go under the hood. I'm gonna get connected to injector 1, and then we're gonna synchronize it with the waveform that we have on the lab scope screen to see if it's gonna work. If the injector is being turned on, we should see an injector pattern here too when we turn the key on. I don't think it is, but let's just try. At this point, let's use this little section here as a learning segment. So I'm learning, you're learning, let's learn together. All right, so let's try this and see if it's gonna work. So here is our first injector. This is injector number 1. I'm going to back probe the wires at the injector. I don't know if the injectors will be commanded on, but we're gonna try it, okay? Because I wanna synchronize injector 1 with the relative compression waveform that we have. So I'm gonna connect my test leads to my back probing tool. I'm using, Matt, I don't know if you can zoom out a little bit and show everyone these long test leads that I'm using. I love these test leads. I'm using these, they call them test drive test leads. I got these test leads from AES Wave, great test leads. So we're gonna connect this over here. Okay, so we're back probing both of our wires at the injector. Now, we back probe those 2 wires. We could also use an amp clamp and wrap it around one of the injector wires to measure the current flow across the injector winding when the injector gets turned on. Now, if we have power, or if we have voltage, not system voltage, that comes from the computer. It's a computer, there's a driver in the computer that controls that. If we have power going to the injector, if we see power on those 2 wires, that will tell us first the wiring of the injector is good and the computer is trying to turn on that injector. So we're gonna use that voltage and then synchronize it with our relative compression voltage drop waveform on the lab scope screen. So now I'm gonna use these long test leads. I'm gonna take them with me in the car. Okay. So I'm gonna connect them to our lab scope. Okay. Let me grab the switch. Now I'm gonna turn on I'm gonna turn on the other channels, channel 2 and 3. Let me increase the voltage on channel 2 and 3 to 50 volts. Okay, so the key is on. I'm going to crank the engine again. What? Oh, this got disconnected. So one side of our starting switch over here got disconnected. Okay, so let's crank this and see what happens. So we have the same waveform on the lab scope screen, but nothing is happening on the other two traces that we have connected to the injector. That's happening because the injectors are not being turned on. So I'm gonna unfreeze this. I'm gonna start the engine now. Watch this. Oh, let me pause this. Let me pause this. I think, oh, I accidentally got that. How? I got that because we were watching the voltage drop across the battery, and also the injector took a little longer. I mean, the engine took a little bit longer to start. Since I was starting it with the key, the injector got turned on, and now watch this. So here's our waveform. It's actually cylinder 1 that's dead. Look over here. This is cool. This is pretty cool. So watch this. So you see this blue voltage spike over here. So this is cylinder 1 trying to come on. Okay, I mean injector 1 trying to spray fuel in the cylinder. So the engine computer is turning on the injector. The injector is turning on, but there is low compression in cylinder 1. Right over here, this is the issue. We have a dead hole right here. Actually, let's go back. We are done with our diagnosis. At this point, I'm just double checking myself. Okay, making sure that this is exactly what we need before we call the customer. I'm gonna put these big blue spikes over here on the screen. So watch this over here. We have a dead hole over here. Same thing repeats itself over here. So low compression on cylinder 1. Yeah, so we only have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 high peaks across the screen. This one over here is dead. So to fix this, we either have to take the engine apart, remove the cylinder head and look at the valves and the piston and check the timing, or get the engine out and install another engine. Okay, so now it's gonna bring us back to the question of, are we gonna install a used engine or remanufactured engine? You guys know how I feel about it. I'm always gonna recommend remanufactured engines all day long. I'm gonna give the customer both options. At that point, he is free to choose whether we're gonna take it apart and fix it, or maybe just replace the engine. So I'm kind of curious to do a a manual compression on that cylinder to see. Now I'm tempted to do it. Let me see if I can find my glow plug adapter. Let's see if I can find it, if I can easily find it. Then we're gonna remove the glow plug, attach it to the glow plug hole. We're gonna crank the engine. We're gonna do just a regular manual compression test using a gauge on cylinder 1. We can also do it on cylinder next to it, which is cylinder 2. Then we're gonna compare the readings we're gonna get. And at that point, we should be done. I know that's what it is. We don't have to do that test. I just want to do it in case. I know some of you don't have lab scope. Some of you don't have the tools I'm using here. You can do the same test with the kind of the old school tools, or the simple tools, if you will. So let me see if I can find the tool, and then we'll bring you guys back up. I think I found the tool that I was looking for. So this is my diesel compression tester set. Okay, so I hope the adapter that I made is here. I made this adapter a little while ago. Actually, I used this, I think a year or two ago. I had a Sprinter that had low compression on one cylinder. We ended up replacing the engine. We got a used engine from LKQ with low miles. Actually, I have that engine sitting outside. When I have time, we're gonna take it apart. Maybe we will do a Sprinter engine disassembly video. So here's the adapter I made. So I got it made from our local machine shop. So they basically made this tube, which looks like the glow plug, and then they attached this adapter to this. So this tube, it's a hollow tube. I can blow through this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove one glow plug, and then Matt, if you can show this set. This is a pretty nice set. Okay, this is very handy. I love this set. Okay, you can use this to do a manual compression test on diesel engines. So what we're gonna do is we're going to use this gauge. We're going to attach this gauge to this adapter like this. This is gonna go in the glow plug hole, and then we're gonna crank the engine. This is gonna allow us to read how much compression we have. Okay, so let's go under the hood and do this really fast, and then we should be done. We're gonna remove the first glow plug so we can do our compression test. So here's glow plug number 1. Hope you can see it right there. So this is glow plug 1, and the glow plug 2 is over here. So this is cylinder 1, 2, and then 3 back there. So I'm gonna spray some WD-40 on it. We're gonna spray the same thing over here too. So hopefully this glow plug is gonna come out very easily. I hope it's not stuck, because these glow plugs sometimes stick. I mean, I don't wanna break the connector. There we go, perfect. Okay, so connector came out, and then I'm gonna use this socket that I actually ground down here. Okay, perfect. And then, oh, nice. Usually, I don't want to speak too soon, but this is coming out pretty nicely. Okay, nice. So here comes our glow plug. So this is glow plug number 1. Okay, so I'm gonna get it out of the way, and then I'm going to install our tool. So this tool is gonna go where the glow plug goes, in the glow plug hole. So we're gonna tighten it. Okay. So I'm gonna tighten our tool over here. Right, so that's good. We got our adapter connected. So now I'm going to connect our gauge, our compression gauge, to the adapter here. The gauge is connected to the adapter tool that goes on the glow plug hole. I'm gonna go grab my starter switch. Okay, so here's how I'm gonna do it. I'm going to connect this over here, okay, and then I'm gonna connect this one over here. Okay, if I crank it, now it's gonna crank. Are we good? Nice. All right, so now let's watch our gauge, our compression gauge. I'm gonna have my switch over here too. Can you see it? Okay, I'm gonna press start switch over here. Okay, so as you guys can see, our compression gauge didn't even move. So, do you see a problem, Matt? Cameraman Matt says he sees the problem. So this gauge should have gone up to like 300 PSI. Okay, on a good engine, I've done this a couple of times. If I can remember correctly off the top of my head, I think the good number here is between 195 and 200. So let's do this one more time, and then I'm gonna remove the glow plug on the cylinder next to it. We're gonna compare the reading we have on this cylinder and the cylinder next to it. Okay, so let me crank this one more time. Watch this. Watch the gauge. So the gauge is just moving. Okay, we don't want to kill the battery. We don't want to kill the starter. So no compression on cylinder number 1, just like we predicted based on the data that we saw on the lab scope screen. So cylinder 1 has no compression, and this is a test that you can do to all my do-it-yourself friends out there. You can do this yourself at home if you have the adapter and the pressure gauge. So we're gonna remove this, and then I'm gonna reinstall the glow plug. So we know right now, we know with 100% surety that cylinder 1 has 0 compression. Now, the bad thing about using a pressure gauge, compression gauge, is that you cannot really tell if you have a timing issue. But if we used an in-cylinder transducer, we could have analyzed the waveform to figure out if our issue is timing. But whether it's timing or piston or whatever, we know that this engine has a mechanical problem. Okay, that we can say with 100% certainty. All right, so I'm gonna reconnect the electrical connector of the glow plug, just like that. So now I'm gonna disconnect the glow plug on cylinder number 2. So this is cylinder 2. I'm gonna disconnect the glow plug. So we're gonna do the same test we did on cylinder 1, and then we're gonna compare. And I can guarantee you that once we connect our pressure gauge to cylinder 2, since cylinder 2 was a misfiring, we're gonna have a good compression reading on cylinder 2, or maybe some type of compression reading on cylinder 2. It may not be good, but we will have some type of compression reading there. So let's remove this glow plug. Here comes our glow plug. So this is glow plug 2. So we got our glow plug removed. Now I'm gonna install our compression tester tool, our adapter. We're gonna crank the engine. We're gonna compare the compression reading that we're gonna have on cylinder 2 to the reading that we had on cylinder 1. I mean, we didn't have any reading from cylinder 1 because this gauge didn't move. So now I'm gonna crank the engine. So check this out. So as you can clearly see that on cylinder 2, our gauge went up. Okay, so we are building compression on cylinder 2. So we went all the way up to about 200 psi. So as you can see, there's a huge difference compared to what we had on cylinder 1. We're not building any pressure on cylinder 1, so cylinder 1 is dead. Okay, let me do this one more time. So look at that. So the gauge moves when we connect to cylinder 2, but our gauge was stuck at 0 on cylinder 1. So we are done. We're done with our diagnosis. Cylinder 1 is dead, just like we saw on the lab scope screen. So we kind of got lucky there when we synchronized it with the voltage on the first injector. That's how I was able to tell cylinder 1 has low compression. Okay, so actually, let me call the customer. Let's let the customer know. Should we call the customer, Matt? Tell him. Okay, cameraman Matt says okay. So, I mean, this is gonna end up being a big repair, okay? Last time I did one of these, we had a Sprinter here that had 2 dead cylinders. 2 cylinders had low compression, we ended up replacing the engine. So maybe it's gonna replace the engine too. So we're done. Cylinder number 1 is dead. Now let's call the customer.
Your call has been forwarded.
He's not picking up. I'm gonna text him. All right, so I sent him a text. Well, we are done. We're gonna leave this right over here. I would have loved to, you know, talk to him while the camera was on, but we're gonna deliver the news to him. You know, cylinder number 1 is dead. It has low compression. Now, you know, it could be a valving issue. It could be a timing issue. Who knows? Now, I'm going to give him 2 options. Option number 1 would be taking the engine apart, removing the heads to figure out what happened, or just replace the engine. I mean, this engine has over 203,000 miles. So it's a high mileage engine. We're gonna have to probably just get another engine and install it, and then we'll go from there. So hopefully he's gonna call back right now so we can film our conversation. But if not, we're gonna leave this right over here. The misfire on this Sprinter was caused by a cylinder that has low compression, not a defective injector. So again, I guess what we can learn from this video is the importance of paying for diagnosis, okay? If your vehicle is not running well, find a professional mechanic who can diagnose it for you to figure out what's happening, what's wrong with the vehicle, instead of just buying parts. So the injectors that he replaced, I'm pretty sure those injectors are good. He bought 6 more that he probably doesn't need. I mean, he can return them, but if he just had his van diagnosed the first time, we would have figured this out a lot sooner. So again, we live and learn. I hope you guys like this video. The customer is calling back. What up, Fabe?
Yeah, what's up, bro?
Doing good, bro. I just called you. I was like, man, this guy didn't pick up. He's a busy man.
No, I didn't hear the phone ring.
You didn't hear the phone ring?
I've been waiting for your call, so why wouldn't I pick up?
I was like, this guy is avoiding my call. He doesn't want to pick up my phone calls. What did I do to him? So we are actually filming the whole process on your van, and actually I'm recording this part. You're actually
using me for YouTuber, man?
You're actually on camera, bro. So I hope you're okay with that. But if you're not okay with it, we can cut this out. That's fine.
What you got?
Okay, so we started the diagnosis, and what we have found is cylinder number 1 has low compression. So we did a relative compression test. I saw the humps across the lab scope screen. I'm sure you probably saw it in in a test I did in one of the videos I did a while ago. So yours is missing one peak. So you only have 4 peaks across the lab scope screen, 1 is missing, which means 1 cylinder has low compression. So we even went further to tap into the cylinder. So we removed the glow plug, we connected an adapter to it to do a manual compression test with a pressure gauge. Cylinder number 1, the gauge is it's stuck at 0, so there's no compression being created in that cylinder. Now, I'm sure when the video comes out, you will probably watch it and you'll see. So cylinder 1 is dead, and I mean, I can't really tell you what went wrong. Maybe there's a valve that's sticking open. Maybe it's a timing issue. I don't think so. Now, knowing that your van has over 200,000 miles, this engine is gone. At this point, we either have to take the engine apart to figure out why cylinder 1 is losing compression. If there's a bent valve, maybe replace the valve or redo the timing if it's the timing, or just replace the engine. So you have 2 options there to fix it properly. So you didn't need injectors. And I'm pretty sure the injectors you replace, they're probably still good.
The place said that number 1 was dead. The injectors were dead. Number 4 was running low.
Is that what they said?
But that's what it say. But on the paper they give me, which is mumbo jumbo, like I said, I really don't understand those numbers, but the numbers look pretty much the same.
Okay.
You
Now,
understand what I'm saying?
now, when you say the place, just so that our viewers here can also understand, so you did remove the injectors. You sent them to a facility that tests injectors. So they tested them.
That's correct.
And they told you that injector 1 wasn't good, but 4 was okay.
Number 4 is on the borderline. Yes.
Okay.
Was okay, but on the borderline.
The borderline. Okay. I mean, I can't. I don't know. I mean, I kind of doubt it. I'm pretty sure based on the results that I got after the test that we did, I'm pretty sure if we put it back on, it's probably going to work. I mean, but at this point, you know. So what I'm going to do is, since it's Saturday today, so on Monday, I'm going to get you a couple quotes. I know you use this van for work. The ideal way to go about this would be buying a remanufactured engine and putting a remanufactured engine on this. So it's going to depend on which route you want to go. I don't like used engines. I mean, they work sometimes, but the thing is, when you buy a used engine, you don't know what you get. You know, the mileage of the engine, the warranty also. Because the thing is, if I install a used engine, my shop insurance does not warranty those used units. Now, unless you just want to, you know, take the risk to go with a used one and not have warranty in terms of labor. So if something was to go wrong, then we can warranty it. But, or we can go with a remanufactured engine, which usually comes with 100,000 miles warranty or 3 years, and also with labor warranty. So we're going to find that out on Monday. I'll get a couple quotes. I'll send them your way, and then you will decide.
So it's just the compression cylinder 1. Can I just get the head redone?
That's possible, yes. The thing at this point, the next step would be taking the engine apart so we can remove the head to see what happened, to see if it's a valve that's bent or not closing all the way, or if it's a timing issue. I don't really think it's a timing issue because after I took a look at it, only one cylinder is really dead, so it's just cylinder 1. And I remember you told me after you rescanned it with your scan tool, only the code for cylinder 1 kept coming back, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. Yeah. So I believe it's just a compression issue, because if it was a timing issue, you would have multiple cylinders that were going to have low compression. So it's just cylinder 1 that has low compression. So basically we got to go in the cylinder to see if it's a piston issue, if it's the rings that are not sealing the cylinder, it's the valves. Now there's another test we do. We use it in cylinder transducer that can kind of give me the idea of whether the valves are closing. But since this is diesel, it works best on like a gas engine. But since this is diesel, if I was to put a transducer on it, I don't know how the waveform is going to look. So anyways, whether I do it in cylinder transducer to figure out exactly if it's the valve that's sticking open, at the end of the day, we either going to have to take it apart, see what's in the cylinder, or replace the engine. So those will be the two options. So whether we do the in-cylinder or not, at least we know right now that that cylinder has low compression. So we know the issue. So if you want to send the heads to the machine shop to get them machined and then put the engine apart, I guess we're just going to have to look at the cost of the labor on like removing the head, you know, timing the engine scope. Because if you remove the head, you got to remove the, you know, the timing cover, timing chain, and cylinder head has to come off. You have to buy the cylinder head gasket kit and all the other stuff. So you have to look at the labor, like how much it's going to cost to go that route versus, you know, removing the engine to see what's going to make the best financial decision. But you never know. You're a rich man, so maybe you don't care how much it costs. All right, guys. So you heard my customer on the phone. He's a good friend of mine, actually. He's been here a couple times. He lives about, I think, 3 hours away from here. Fabe, good guy. So we're going to end this over here. He mentioned taking the heads to the machine shop. So I'm going to make a couple estimates. I'm going to make one estimate using a remanufactured engine. And then there will be another estimate with a used engine. And then the third estimate if we were to remove the heads and machine them and put everything back together. So now, some of you might say, why do you give customers the option to buy used engine or install used engines? Honestly, I don't like customers to install used engines or used transmissions or used units on their vehicles. But I also understand that some people don't have that budget. So I give people different options, then I educate them based on the option that they're going to choose, and then I let them decide. So I always recommend OEM or remanufactured engines. Always. But if they tell me that they want the used one, I'm going to install it as long as they understand that I'm not going to warranty my labor, and I'm not going to warranty to the unit or the used engine. Now, actually, when I was reading the comments in the previous video, someone mentioned that LKQ, I'm sure you guys some of you are familiar with that company. The company LKQ gives out warranty for labor. So I'm probably going to have to call LKQ and talk to them and see if they can start giving us warranty for the labor on the units that we going to start buying from them. I buy from a lot of junkyards based on the price and the mileage. So I'll call LKQ to see if they're going to start giving us warranty on the labor. And that's good, actually. I can recommend that to a customer, because if we get an engine from, let's say, LKQ, if they warranty the part and the labor, then me as a technician, it gives me peace of mind, because when I install it, I know if something was to happen, I can just call them and say, hey, the engine you sent me has a leak or has low compression. Then they're going to send me another engine, and they're also going to pay for my labor, because my insurance here does not cover used units. Like I've mentioned it multiple times. We're going to leave this right over here. There might be part 2 of this video. Maybe you'll see part 2 if he decides to buy an engine. Anyways, whatever he decides to do, we might make part 2. So for now, we're going to end this right over here. I hope you like the video. If you do like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumb down. But if you do, tell us why. Cameraman Matt, thank you for being here. Guys, let us know how you like the new videos that we are producing now, the camera angles, the picture, the camera. If you have a question for me or Matt, if you have a criticism, if you have, whatever comment, whatever you would like to say about this video, let us know in the comment section. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next time.